some Google workers have made it official. They are forming a union. Two members of that union reveal that hundreds of Google employees have formed a union called the Alphabet Workers Union with the Communication Workers of America. And the announcement comes after years of some global company walkouts.
So here to discuss Google workers' demands is Alex Gorowara, a software engineer who works for Google Travel. Great to have you, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So union density, of course, has dramatically declined in America. It's fairly rare for any private sector employees, even more rare for white-collar private sector employees. Talk to us about why you were part of forming the union, and why you think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Alphabet and Google have a long history of worker activism, a long history of workers caring about their work environment, caring about how their work is used ethically and fairly. And the union is sort of an extension of that, an extension of people who care about each other and their work. And what we've seen, especially in recent years, is Alphabet failing to live up to our expectations there, failing to act ethically, failing to act consistently in accord with the principles that we generally all believe in. And our hope is to be able to steer Alphabet to a more ethical course, both for the benefit of its workers and for the public in general.
So let's talk about that, Alex, because it's interesting. I mean, obviously, the traditional union is about collective bargaining in order to increase wage and worker protection. You're using more terminology associated with political activism. Just talk to us about, am I wrong in interpreting that? What are your goals throughout this, and more?
I think that is closer to the truth. We are what's called a minority union, because we are not a majority of the workplace yet. We are growing rapidly. At launch last Monday, we had a little over 200 members. The latest numbers that I have from 5 days ago are that we're nearing 700.
Wow.
But that is still a small fraction of Google's overall workplace, especially once you account for, and you must account for, the half of Google's workforce that is made up of temps, vendors, and contractors, people generally not included in the full-time employee count. As a minority union, or what I would call a more traditional labor union, our power does not derive from a specific law or statute. It comes from the fact that we are the workers and we are what makes the company run. And instead of demanding collective bargaining based on a particular law, we're hoping to get Alphabet's attention and responsiveness simply by speaking together, by raising a collective voice.
Yeah, through collective action and through the principle of solidarity. And Alex, one of the things that I thought was really exciting was you all made it a point to make sure you include those contractors, which is not always the case. Talk about why that was so significant.
So the real reason is that we care about each other. And we could have made decisions that would have allowed only full-time employees, only half the workforce, and generally the better treated half of the workforce to join this union. But because we're a union focused on making things right, focused on making sure that Alphabet fulfills its ethical duties, we see it as an obligation to make sure that everyone is included, and that arbitrary boundaries like whether or not Google has or Alphabet has found it more expedient to hire someone on a more disconnected basis, we don't want those boundaries to get in the way of what we believe are the rights of all workers.
Alex, my last question for you here, which is just generally, how do you see this within the trend of Silicon Valley? It's not like we've seen a lot of unions. Obviously, we have Uber and Lyft, and there's a lot of tension over there, but a different workforce, I think, to be fair. How do you think that this is? How do you see this in the context of firms like Google and Apple and Amazon?
Well, I can't do too much speculation. I'm not an expert. I've got some training, but I think that this is part of a need that people are realizing. So we are the first big tech wall-to-wall union, but we're not the first tech union. We give props to others that have come before us, like the union at Kickstarter. But I think that this is an example that we're setting that others can follow as we have followed those before us. And I think that workers of all sorts at Apple, at Amazon, are going to see what we can accomplish and be inspired and find their own power to challenge their own workplaces' unethical practices of their own businesses' directions which aren't in the public interest or their interest.
Really interesting, Alex. Thank you so much. Please keep us updated.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, McConnell is open to supporting impeachment, but is there something more to that strategy? We're going to discuss when Rising continues.